Okay, cool. So what we'll do today is we'll set up routing, right? So yesterday we were able to get some login page done. Today we'll set up routing on the app, and then after routing we'll create a list view as well as if time permits, even complete some basic CRUD operations uh, with Frappe React SDK. Uh, yeah, I guess, and if again time permits, we can either look into socket events or we can look into revalidations and what that is. So yeah, let's get started. I'll open up my bench. I forget the name of the bench, and this is not going to help either. I think it was React training. Yeah. Okay. Bench start. That's running. I'll open up a new tab, navigate to scope, uh, open this up in VS Code.
Please share the screen.
Oh, sorry. Mm, yeah, can you see my screen now?
Yeah, we can.
And hopefully the whole thing, right? So, like if I'm switching windows, you can see that, right?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can.
Okay. So, yeah, so all I did was start bench and then I'm inside scope. I opened that up in VS Code. I'll go to our front end folder and start the React server, right? Now I'll go back to my browser and open up localhost 8026 in my case. I'll log in as administrator and localhost 8080. Great. So this was, the page that we had when the user was logged in. Uh, and what we'll do is that we will set up routing, right? So let's see. For routing, the library that we'll use is React Router, right? So this is coming from the same team that built Remix. They built Remix after React Router. It's the default way to actually route in React. However, the React team doesn't really recommend anything as such, right? Because you can have, if you were using Next.js, they have their own routing mechanism. If you were using Remix, they have their own. There's also something called a stand stack router, which Hussein tried during, when he was building Hazelnode, didn't like it. This has been my go-to for the last 4 years or so, right? So I'm comfortable with this and we'll use this. Uh, what we want is that if you think about our app, if you think about, let's say that this app at slash scope, right? What we would ideally want is that any URL that goes, after scope, right, is handled by a React app, right? So if let's say if I had a list of projects and so my URL was slash scope slash projects, I would like to show a list of projects and that routing needs to be handled by the React app, right? That's what is offered by React Router or any single page app, routing library. So let's set that up, right? Let's actually create 2 or 3 dummy pages and let's see how we can set up React Router. Um, we'll need browser router because we don't really need a hash router or a memory router. These are usually used in React Native and other contexts. Uh, Browser router is good for us because we would like the browser back buttons, forward buttons, etc. to work, right? So it looks something like this. This is one syntax. From version 5 to version 6, they also had another syntax that we use in Raven, but for now we'll just use this, right? I'm going to first install React Router DOM, and so for that I need to do that in my front end directory, right? Yarn add React Router DOM. Okay, that was quick. I'll again start my React server. Okay, cool. So now what I'll do is that I'll just bring this, import, create browser router and router provider. I need these two on my app folder here. Okay, cool. And then I'll create this router. Our router will look a little different, but yeah. Okay. So what we would like is that we create, uh, let's just create a bunch of dummy pages for now, right? So let's remove this. In my path projects for our element to the JSX that we render, let's just do this for now, right? Similarly, we can have path as tasks and element tasks, right? Okay, I think that makes sense. And then now we need to wrap our entire app with the router provider and pass the router to it, right? That's shown over here. So that we can do here. It doesn't matter how you nest it. Uh, Actually, let me see. If we are using this, maybe we can just put it into main.tsx. Hmm. Yeah, that actually makes more sense. So, yeah. Okay, I'll move this into main.tsx instead. Just makes more sense over there somehow. Because then I can just put the app.tsx as a root element. Uh, so yeah, makes more sense. Okay, let's go to main.tsx, bring it over here. Then over here, I'll need my element where I can say app. Okay, and over here, I'll do router provider router and close this. Okay, and in my app, uh, I'll need something called as an outlet. Okay, let's see if that works. So an outlet is nothing but, if you look at this routing structure, right, this is my root path, and then these are the children, right? So if the path is on the root path, then it will just render the Frappe provider, else it will render these children. And it will render the children in the outlet, right? Now, since I want each page to actually be wrapped by the Frappe provider, I've made that like I've just kept the root as the app. I think in other apps, what I've done is that I haven't done it in main, primarily because I was using React out of 5 and then migrated to 6. So yeah, I actually created those routes in app.tsx itself, but had another component, nested component for to handle that. Anyway, this should technically work. If I go here, see now it's empty. If I go to projects, yeah, I have projects right over here. Uh, and if I go to, I think we did Tasks, yeah. Okay, our routing should always be inside the Frappe. Not necessarily. What we want is that each page is inside Frappe provider, but a routing can be outside. It's just a provider, right? As long as Frappe provider doesn't mount unnecessarily all the time, we can check that. We can create a use effect over here. This is just for testing, so if you're following along, you don't need to do this. Okay. We can check how many times this is actually being mounted, right? And I'll just create a link over here so that I can navigate back between two. Yeah. Okay. Now, if I go to projects, yeah, that's my link. So if I go to project, see it's being mounted two times, and that's because use effect runs two times in strict mode on development environment. In production, it'll just run once. If I navigate to tasks, right? Hmm. Oh, okay, sorry. Slash tasks. Yeah. Yeah. If I navigate to tasks, it's not mounting again, right? So the Frappe provider, it's not like the Frappe provider or the entire app component itself is being mounted, remounted whenever your route changes. So it's fine. What's actually happening is that in our app, whenever the route changes, only this part, outlet is being mounted, unmounted, right? So yeah, this works. Uh, One of the problems is that let's say if we build this app now, and this is a very common problem that people run into and usually ask us. Let's build this app, bench build app scope, and let's see it in production. In production, this won't work. The routing setup that we've done won't work. Uh, let's see. See, it says 404 not found, right? And even if I do slash scope slash projects, right, it says 404 not found. If I do task 404 not found, why is that? I'm going to the correct path, right? This is the exact same path slash tasks. The problem is that the way React Router works is that it will look at the entire path, right? And the entire path is scope slash tasks. And on production, on our local dev server, it's just tasks because this is a local dev server. It's not being served by Frappe on a separate path. But on our production server, there is a separate base to it. I mean, all paths will be relative to scope. So if something on the dev environment is slash tasks or slash project, right, that will be slash scope slash tasks on our production environment. This is only for a Doppio based Frappe app setup, like a Frappe React app setup. Not really applicable for like a Next.js or something, but if it's being hosted or if it's being served by the Frappe site itself, then this is going to be an issue. So how do we solve for this? Well, we know that the base path or the base path is actually scope. It will always start with scope, right? So what we'll do is we'll create a new env file called as .env.production. And we only want this on production. We don't want a regular environment file. We only want it on production. And we can call this environment variable base name or base path, right? And we can say scope. I don't know if we need the trailing slash or not. We'll check. But this wheat base path is what we'll set up in our router. So in our router, create browser router, it actually takes some options and it takes a base name, right? And we can say import dot meta dot env dot wheat base path. I have a feeling that it will take the trailing slash, but let's see. So we've set up a base name. Now, if you look at if you look at our dev environment, this will still work, right? Dev environment has no problems at all because the environment variable was only set for prod. Let's actually build again and let's see if that works. Didn't work either. So I think the training slash is required. Let's go back to our env prod. Yeah, and let's build again. Yeah. So now the React app actually renders. There is no error. And if I go to slash projects, see, it works. Now it's all relative to slash scope, right? The entire URL that we gave, all the paths that you give on production, they are relative to that base path, which is slash scope, right? In Raven's case, it's slash Raven. In your case, it could be something else. It doesn't really matter. So that's one thing that you need to be on the lookout for, right? So what did we do? We installed React Router DOM, right? Went to main.tsx, created this browser router. These are just dummy routes for now because we'll actually replace it with our login page, and then if it's not logged in, we can show something else, something like that. And then we did. Let's look at this. Yeah, we set up our base name using the env.production file. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Any questions so far? Okay, cool. So if you're following along, am I going too fast or do you want me to repeat something? Okay, Bhavik says it's fine. Okay, I can repeat base name setup. Okay, Babu, your command not found bench, that means that you haven't installed Frappe bench on your system, right? Or at least the CLI isn't getting the command. So that's the problem. For the base name, yes. So see, on production, right, all of our URLs are going to be relative to slash scope, right? Whatever your site URL, slash scope, slash, and then your path starts, right? When React Router looks at this path, right, and if we don't tell it that, hey, you start with slash scope only on production, right, it will assume that this is the entire path. And obviously, at that path, there is nothing, that exists in its routing, right? So that's why we set up in our router, we give it a base name, right? And the base name is nothing but slash scope, which we set up in env.production because we only want it for production environments. Okay, cool. So let's move forward and let's set up a protected route. Uh, okay, so for scope is in the folder name. Scope is the So remember that our React app is in the front end folder, right? What we did though is in hooks.py, we routed from scope to scope. This is one, and then in our um, copy HTML entry, right? So in our yarn build, that is in our package.json, what we did was we said that whatever is in index.html, just copy it to scope.html. So yeah, scope isn't technically the folder name. Scope is the app name, right? But it's also the path on which we are serving the React app. See, we're serving the React app on, on slash scope. So yeah, okay. So let's move on. Regarding the bench setup, Babu, you'll have to. I mean, that's a pain for everyone, right? So you'll have to figure that out. Maybe go through the forums or something because, yeah, that's a pain. Like once it's set up, then it's fine. But the initial setup, yeah, takes time.
Oh, okay, sir. I will try.
Yeah, Hussein says try Frappe Manager. Yeah, that's also a good idea if you are familiar with Docker-based systems because Hussein, even in Frappe Manager, I've seen that the custom apps, etc., are a little wonky. So yeah, this is main.tsx. We will change the routing now, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so now, what do you want me to do first, right? Do you want me to build out the projects page, tasks page first, and then set up the routing so that if the user is logged in, they will go there? Or do you want me to set up that routing first? So basically, my question is that if we make these pages, this is just CRUD, right? We'll use some hooks in Frappe React SDK. Otherwise, we are just routing, we look at the current user and we'll route the user accordingly. So which one do you want to do? Project and tasks page first. We'll take a quick poll. Everyone just, comment or speak up. OAuth is nothing different, right? OAuth is just you can check Raven. OAuth won't be in the scope because OAuth is nothing but routing it to Google or Facebook using the URL that they provide, and then they'll redirect you back, and Frappe will automatically handle the routing as well, or sorry, the setting of the cookie as well. So you can check Raven for that. I mean, it's actually pretty simple. It's like literally an A tag. User clicks, just we just take them to the page. Pages first. Okay. So I've gotten two votes for pages first. Let's do that. If you're curious as to how we would, handle the routing for the login pages, what we can do is that, okay, I'll get rid of this. We don't need that. Yeah, what we can do is something maybe like this that, over here we actually check. So we have a component over here called protected route or something, right? That basically checks if the current user is null, right? Show the login page, else show the outlet, right? Or we can do it over here. There are multiple ways. In fact, the React Router community has various ways to actually handle it. You can also do it over here, wherein you have another nested route and you handle that over there. Because sometimes you might have pages that are not all login protected. You might have some public pages. A good example would be like a sign up page is separate and a login page is separate. So yeah, it's just a conditional check, right? In between one of these components, you'll just check. If you remember our login page, we had this use Frappe auth. You'll just check if the current user is null or not. So yeah, let's set up the projects page, right? We'll create a new page. We'll call it. But before we create a new page, we need to create a sidebar or something. But I don't want to waste a lot of time on it. Let's first create the projects page. Let's get a list view done, and then let's see how we go from there. So we say projects, and we'll just bring up a list of projects. TSRAFCE. Okay, cool. Won't take any props. This component will be empty. Perfect. Now we'll take this and in our main.tsx, let's instead of rendering this, we can render projects. Okay, cool. Let's see on our local dev environment, does that work? Yeah, it's the same. I mean, it will look the same, but yeah. Okay. Now, what do we want for projects? I was thinking that we start with a very, very simple list view, right? And we see how to fetch a list of data in Frappe React SDK. Pretty simple, but for that, I'll first get my UI pieces done. So, do they have something over here? I mean, this looks pretty nice, right? This example. It's got pagination and stuff. What's this? Okay. Yeah, this looks pretty nice, to be honest. Maybe we can use this for our tasks page. But let's go to components. Do they have blocks or something that we can use? I want to do the most lazy thing possible. Uh, Not really. Fine, we'll build it ourselves. Let's see their table component. Yeah, we need to make something like this. So we'll install their table. Let's go back to our terminal. Again, remember in the front end directory, right? Add table. So it must have added this table component. Let's see if I can get that in. And so we'll make this table a lot more complicated soon, right? With pagination and stuff. But okay, we do see something. Uh, Maybe we can actually, have like a heading or something over here as well. So we can say heading. Oh, wait. So for heading, we'll have to. Do they have for typography? They have something over here. Yeah, they have all of these typography H1 and all of this. Uh, hmm, what to do? Should we just copy this maybe? Then we'll adjust it. I mean, our UI doesn't really matter, right? To be honest, yeah, too big. Okay, and then we can give all of this a padding of 2. Yeah, and an MB of 4. Okay, looks somewhat fine to me. Let's look at our doc type structure for projects in ERPNext. Not project type, projects. Okay. We don't have any project, but let's actually create a project, React for project management, right? And we save it. Okay, so we have a lot of fields, but what we would need is maybe the ID of the project name, status, whether it's active or not, priority, and the maybe the expected start date and expected end date, right? Let's just bring this much, and maybe the percentage completion as well. So let's just bring this much and see, how to render it, right? So first of all, we need to fetch projects. So I can do something like there's this hook called use Frappe get doc list. And use Frappe get doc list is used to fetch a list of documents from the database, right? I need to pass it a doc type. So if let's say if I pass it just project, right, it will return a bunch of variables to us, but the main thing is data. We only need the data. And I can console.log this data to show you how it looks. So yeah. So originally data is undefined and then data is an array, right? Now, if I do use Frappe get doc list, I haven't added any filters, any pagination, nothing, right? So it only gives me the name and it gives me as a dictionary, but we want it as a dictionary to be honest, or as an object. So it only gives me the name. We want more than that, that's all right, but uh, that's what use Frappe get doc list does, right? Now, ideally, whenever you're performing any sort of page or any form of fetching or updating data, right? Any CRUD operation basically, right? You need to handle two states. You need to handle something called as a loading state, right? Because if the data is loading, you want to show like a skeleton or something, right? And if there's an error, you want to show the error, right? So these two are available in UseWrapper get doc list. Now, if you were to make this yourself, right, without Frappe React SDK, you would need to maintain all of these as states, right? And then so there will be a state for is loading, there will be a state for error, there will be a state for data, right? And then you would have to use some fetching library, maybe React query, maybe SWR, whatever it is. If you're using React query or SWR, then the state management is done by you, by those libraries, but otherwise it would have to be done by you, right? The other thing is that this, use Traffic get doc list actually performs all of the caching, etc. as well, right? So the data is actually cached, and I'll show that later. The other thing is that this is also incredibly performant. That is, let's say that I do not use is loading in my hook, right? I only use data. I don't use is loading. Is loading is not used at all. It will, and if is loading changes, right? Even then, this entire page is not going to re-render. Remember that whenever a state changes, we always think, okay, the entire thing will re-render. But in this case, since I'm not actually using the variable, right, the component won't re-render. Uh, if I use it, then it will, right? So let's move on and let's add some arguments to this, right? First of all, we want to pass more fields, right? If you're if you use Frappe, and in Frappe, if you have written code in the JavaScript or Python files, right, that is more than just normal customization, you'll see that the structure is the API structure is pretty much the same, right? Like filters are an array of arrays, fields are an array of strings, right? So all of this is pretty much the same that we see in Frappe. So I'll pass fields. I need the name. The name is the primary key, right? Let's see what all do we need. We need the project name. We need the status, uh, expected start date and end date, right? Okay, expected start date, expected end date, percent complete. Yeah, and priority maybe. Okay, perfect. So we have these fields. Now if I go back to my my dev environment, you'll see now we are fetching everything, right? So that's done. Now we can wire up the table. So we don't need a table caption. What black window? Mm, Hussein, which black window are you talking about? Uh, I think the switching is just Mac OS doing that.
No, it shows like a battery levels and something in between, and then yeah, that thing.
Oh, really?
Fine.
Where? This one?
It does. No, no. When you switch the window, it shows a black screen with battery levels, etc. Every time you switch.
Oh, wow. I don't see it myself.
Probably some screensaver stuff, or
Yeah, I don't see it on OBS either. Maybe it's only on Zoom.
not sure. It's fine. You can continue.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Mm, what we want is we want the project ID, or we can just call this ID. We want to show the title. We want to show the status. What else was there? We had start date, end date, percent complete. So percent complete, priority. Okay, so we have all of these. Um, Now we need to make for each row or for each element in our array, we need to render this row, right? So what we can do is we can say data. Now remember that data can be undefined and it will be undefined when the data is being loaded, right? So we can say data.map and project. Okay, cool. And we can render this. So we'll say return table row. Right? Now, you see, it says project is defined but never used, project is any. That's because we haven't really specified a type for this, right? And that's where we'll actually bring in, you know, so for auto completion and stuff, we use TypeScript, right? TypeScript works extremely well, but for these doc types, we don't really have any types declared. So what we can do is we can use an app called Frappe Types. So I'll get this app, install this app. Yeah, okay. Bench install app Frappe underscore types. Okay, we'll restart bench. Cool. If you look at I think Frappe type should be installed now. Yeah, Frappe types. So there's something called as type generation settings. Oh, we'll have to run bench migrate. Hmm. Okay. So there's something called as type generation settings. Yes. So I want to generate types automatically for any doc types that we create, right? So we want to, we want for scope, right? I want the types to be dumped into scope, and also if scope's own doc types, etc., are changed, just generate TypeScript type definitions, right? Okay. Before doing all of this, I'll show you what we had to do earlier, right? So I would actually create something called as an interface over here, and then I would like literally, you know, name like, I mean, now Copilot is doing everything, but earlier this wasn't the case. But we had to do this, right? And then we used to say that the type is project, let's say. I haven't completed the types, but we had to manually do this. And then we used to go over here, and now this type is project, right? And we used to do, okay, project dot name, and then we get the autocomplete. See, we get the autocomplete over here. Problem being that this is time consuming. Just generating these types is, time consuming. And the other thing is that there's no source of truth. There's no single source of truth, at least, right? Once your React app gets very, very large, let's say you as a developer created a type interface somewhere, somewhere else you'll be referring to the same doc type. Uh, and you'll have to again create it, or you'll have to maintain a global, state. Now, let's say if you had backend developers and front-end developers on your team, someone changes the doc type, the front end never actually gets those updates. So, huge problem, right? So, we created this Frappe types app. So, you just specify the app name, the Frappe app name that you want to push the uh, types to, and then you give where you want to, dump those type files. So in our case, it's in the front end folder because we need it on the React app. In the front end folder, in the SRC folder, right? So in front end slash SRC, we need the types to be generated. Now, project doc type itself is not our doc type, right? So I can't really go into edit doc type and change, project. But I would like to generate type definitions for project. So there is a CLI command for it. It's bench generate types for doc type. So over here, I can say the app name is scope, the app on which I want to do, and the doc type is project. I want to generate types for child tables. Yes. For custom fields, so sometimes it is possible that you have custom fields, you've generated custom fields in your custom app. So if you wanted to export those custom fields, you can do that. In our case, we'll do yes and done. So if I go back to my source control, you'll see we have this project.ts. So more importantly, look at this SRC folder now. There's this types folder that has been added, and it automatically created a project.ts interface for us. These are all the fields that are available, including with comments, that what the uh, what the field is of type. So sometimes, we might need to know whether a particular field is of type date or not, because even a date types field is going to be a string when we get it from the backend, right? So, but it does tell you what type, right? It gives you the label. And if there was a description like a helper text or something, that would also come up. So, for example, over here, right? This is the users. It's a child table of project user doc type. Project will be accessible on the website to these users. Now, the great thing about this is that I don't need to do this, and I can just import my types from here, right? Now, if I do, project dot, right, something. So in this case, it'll be project name. I actually get the autocomplete over here. See? So highly recommended. Uh, yeah, if we add custom column in project doctype, how to get those fields? Yeah, it's the same process, right? So see, it asked me, do you want to generate types for custom fields too? So any custom fields, you can just say yes, and it will, add it to your TypeScript type definition for project. So custom column means custom fields, I'm assuming. So yeah, let's actually complete this now. Project.status, project.priority. Now the start date end date will be a problem, and I'll get to it why, but so will percent complete. But for now, at least, let's see. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we don't have a start date end date, that's fine. But see, now we have a list and we can do all sorts of things over here. But to begin with, though, let's see if we can. I think this is fine. Let's see if we can add a start date end date. And now the output with the start date end date will be, we started this on the 22nd, right? And let's say that we finish on the 26th. Yeah. Now the date formatting, etc., you'll have to take care of, right? So, we've created a bunch of date formatters. It's not in Frappe React SDK, but we can use day.js or something like that to actually format these dates, right? Not not a big deal as of now, right? At least for this training, it doesn't really matter. You would just when you're rendering this, you would just format it into your preferred format, right? Whether that's DDMMYY or if you're a American and only an American would you do MMDDYYY, right? So yeah, same with the percentage complete because then you'll also have to round it off. So is bench create type? No, that's an inbuilt command in Frappe types. So it's available. Yeah, thanks, Zombie. So it's available over here. You can read the documentation. So yeah. Okay. Any questions so far, or do you want to see the code? No questions? Uh, does the app support in all? Do you mean previous versions of Frappe? Yeah, Frappe types would work. I don't see a reason why it wouldn't work for like even version 13 or even version 12 to be honest. Yeah, it should work. Any questions, doubts, or if people are following along, should I wait or are you all caught up? Yeah, I'll do that. Status filter and all, I'll do that. I'll do that for the task. I'll copy that example that they had and then do it from there. So, okay. So if we don't have any questions, right, let's see, what's the issue right now, right? So I'm not using is loading. But the problem is that let's say if my network was like slow 3G or something, see, there's this layout shift that happens, once the data is loaded, and then uh, there's no indicator to the user that data is being loaded, right? Now that's a very simple fix. We can do something like, over here we can say, hey, if it's loading, show a loader, right? Else show the table, right? Pretty simple. You can actually get very fancy with tables. You can create a skeleton loader as well, right? A skeleton loader is nothing but the same table, but now the rows have, little skeletons. So yeah, you can go pretty fancy with all of that. Now for the tasks, right? And sorry, we'll actually cover the error as well, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of get doc list. So let's look at the error. Let's say that I misspelled a particular variable name because that's the only way that I can actually get error done. Now, another great thing about Frappe types is that it doesn't really allow you to make an error in the first place, right? You see, because we gave it a type of project, it knows that fields can only be one of these projects fields, right? That's what we have, added in Frappe React SDK. So it already gives you, an error indicator that look, something seems off about this. Either your type is incorrect or your, variable name. In this case, the variable name is incorrect, right? This actually saves a lot more time than you might think. So, uh, yeah, uh, we know that this will throw an error. This is intentional. I just want to see what comes up in the error, right? So let's look at this. Now the error is looks something like this, right? It gives you an HTTP status and an HTTP status text. It gives you the exception. It's not necessary to add the Frappe TypeScript type generator. Otherwise, I mean, if you're using JavaScript, you don't need to do anything. If you're using TypeScript, which is something that I cannot recommend enough, right? If you're using TypeScript, then you would have to, create these interfaces yourself. And if you don't want to create it yourself and you just want everything to be in sync, so I'll give you an example. We are a team of 6 developers, right? Anytime someone pushes code and they make a change to the doc type, right? Our entire code base, so not only the backend, right? Because it's a single source of truth, right? The doc type is the single source of truth. So when the doc type changes automatically, all the downstream React components that use that doc type, right? Because we're using TypeScript, they also change. And so the build fails, right? If, let's say, if a field was deleted and we're using that field in our React app, right? The build automatically fails in our GitHub Actions. And that's how we prevent, I don't know, thousands of errors probably, right? Before this, we used to get errors like, oh, okay, this field does not exist, field not permitted in query, uh, this is undefined, right? And the app used to crash. So those stupid errors don't happen with TypeScript. So, and Frappe types allows you to generate types for your doc types. That's it. So again, both of those are optional, up to you, right? But recommended, yes. Okay. So going back to this, now the problem with this error that Frappe returns, I think it's not an issue with version 2, but it is an issue with version 1 or the original API, is that none of this is actually usable. Like, uh, I mean, what do I show, right, to the user? Do I show the exception? But then it says frappe.exceptions.data error, right? I mean, this is fine. This is the correct error message, but then this is weird. Then, what do I show? Should I show this message? This message is just returned by Frappe React SDK. So it's not really, it doesn't really give you more context. Uh, the best is underscore server underscore messages. but it's all wrapped in this JSON that's stringified and that's again stringified. It's a mess, right? This is one of the biggest challenges that we face, especially because once you know that in some errors, right, exception is not thrown. And in some errors, we don't get server messages, right? So in some APIs and all. In this API, this is pretty standard API. It's a resource API. But if you're making your own custom API, sometimes this exception doesn't come up. Sometimes this EXC doesn't come up. So we created a component for error banner, right? Maybe I'll share the source code for that in our chat, right? On Frappe, on that Frappe chat that we have for Frappe School. Uh, but yeah, this is yeah. I'll just publish that as a component somewhere, right? But I think Raven would have that. Let me check. So Raven would have an error banner. Yeah, so we have get error message, get error messages, and it parses and does all of this. I think the early version of Frappe UI also used to do this. Um, so, and then the error banner itself, which is, an error callout. So yeah, I'll share this. Um, Get some field from project user doc type, need to know how to get child doc type fields. Now the get list, where is it? Right. Yeah. Yeah. The problem with that is that this API is like the slash API slash resource API. It doesn't support querying the child table, right? Primarily because it's a one-to-many relationship, right? So if you have a child table and you have, 10 different fields in it, or 10 different rows in it, sorry, right? And if you pick one of those fields, which one of those rows would come up over here? If you're expecting it's a nested array, right? Yeah, that won't work with use frappe get doc list. You'll have to create a custom API. At least that's my understanding. I don't know if Hussein or Rafal would know that the standard REST API can we query child table in it. I think we can filter the child table. Like, we can filter using any of the child tables fields, but I don't think that we can query a field from the child table. Uh, I'll let them, chime in if they are there. Okay, I don't think they are there. Okay, so yeah, this won't the API. Let me actually show you the API itself. The API is the slash API slash resource one, and so this doesn't really have that. Uh, it doesn't allow you to query a field from the child table. So you'll have to create a custom API. We'll get to, but in API resource API, it gives the child field. How? Like, tell me what would I add in the field name? Like, I can just change the field name to get it, right? So how does it allow you to get the child field? It gets you the entire doc, right? This is the I'm not passing in a doc name or the doc ID over here slash project slash ID. I don't know if the list API allows you to get a child field. If you have an example,
Heineke, you can get the child field. Um, Let me post an example on the app, on the chat.
yeah, Neeraj, exactly. That was kind of my point that there's a one-to-many relationship, so you'll get more. Yeah, yeah. So this one should get you. Okay. Yeah, that's all right. This can. run into an error for TypeScript, but that's fine. Let's see if that works. Our name, actually, we'll have to do as project user name. Yeah, project username. Yeah, this comes up, but let's say if I created two project users, let's do that. Where's project user? Do we have some other child table over here that we can use? No? So I'll have to create a user then. Create a new user. Okay. Oh, does this need to send an email? Yeah, perfect. Okay, now let's say if I bring this up, see, now as Neeraj said, you get two rows, and then now on the front end, you'll have to combine those two rows or something, right? That's why I avoid it. I just create an API, right? Whatever fields I need, we just use the query builder to get that. That's actually far better. Uh, but yeah, if you wanted to, you could do this. You can, and maybe we can build a hook for that as well. That brings in all of these rows and then combines them together or something. If you wanted to query it with the child table, maybe there's a case for it. I don't use it this way. But yeah, I mean, so okay, so here's the thing, right? This this use Frappe get doc list is just using the standard Frappe API. So anything that the Frappe API supports, this will support, right? So you can pass in, I mean, you'll see that this is throwing an error, right? That's just a TypeScript error. You can ignore that, or you can tell the compiler to ignore it. But even in filters, etc., right? Since typing for since adding type definitions for, let's say, a child table filter is so complicated, right? We did not do it, but you can technically pass in an array with four, four variables, right? The child table name, variable name, operator, operand, right? So that's also supported because that's what the native API supports, right? And in Frappe. So that's supported, but again, up to you. In this case, we don't really need it, but yeah. I hope that answers your question. Neeraj, how did you solve the duplicate records? Uh, did you manually then coalesce the data? So I think if we get time on the last date, we can try creating a custom hook of ours, wherein we allow users to query both the regular fields and the child table fields, and then we somehow manage to coalesce them right into the same. Maybe I think it would work. So okay, so with the error, I'll share the code in our chat, right? So this is error handling and the loading state. Now, yeah, we we done it manually on front end side to merge the duplicate records. Correct. Yeah, there's really no way, but it would be nice if Rapid React SDK has that feature maybe. But the problem is that you can have multiple child tables and everything, right? So that's a problem. Anyway, um, let's see. What do we do next? Um, we can go into the tasks list. So we'll create a new page. and we'll copy that task, example that Shatsian had, because it had filters and stuff, and I think someone requested we anyway have to cover it. The filters. So I think it was in examples and tasks. Let's bring this up. Where do I get the code for this? GitHub. Do you see somewhere examples? Examples, and let's look at tasks. Mm, okay, it says welcome back. Here's a list of tasks for this month, and then there's this user nav. That user nav is this. Okay, we don't need these two things, right? That we can get. We need the filter, so we need this data table stuff. That data table is coming from components over here. Okay, this is going to take time. Damn, they're doing a lot of things. Okay, you know what? Let's just make a very simple one for now. We'll just mm, okay, for tasks, I was anyway going to build something similar to linear. So maybe on the projects itself. So I was going to do something like this for the tasks, right? So it won't be a table anyway. So let's actually try filtering the project by status. We'll maintain a state, and this state could be, mm, yeah, this state could be empty for now. We can filter by status, right? And then we need in chat.cn, we need a component. We need a select component like this. We'll install this select component. To accumulate, I usually use reduce function. Yes. Yeah, you would have to do something similar, but if we were able to, get it in the same structure, right? That is child table variable name, and then, and then it's a nested object or something, then that would be pretty cool. So yeah, we'll see. I'll try to make that hook. It shouldn't be complicated as such. So anyway, we've added the select component, and then we'll just bring this up like here. We'll copy this. Where's okay? Let's actually close down Raven. It's confusing now. Okay, we have select, and then in this we copy this. We need it somewhere over here, and this won't be the theme. This will be the status. And what else statuses do we have for project? Actually, we can look at it over here. Status is open, completed, or cancelled. Okay, and then we need to wire this up, right, with our state variable over here. And then we also need to do something like this. Not status, but filters. So filters will be an array. of arrays, right? Array of arrays. Uh, the problem is that if there is no status, then we don't really need to filter. So we can say if there is a status, then do this, else do this. Uh, else, okay, actually, we can't have an empty array inside. We need to do it outside. Yeah. Okay, so if there's a status, then add it, else undefined. Now, you might be wondering, hey, if I have, multiple fields, how will I actually construct this query? It's simple. You just need to prepare your filters in a separate like memo or something, like a use memo, right? And then, pass that filters entire array over here, right? So you'll just check if status, then you'll append to the filters array. And then, finally that memo as output you'll return. So that's the way that you would do it. Now over here, how do we wire this select thing up? Mm, so it has on value change and value. So that's inside select itself. Okay. On value change, we can just say set status, right? And then value, we can say status. Okay, perfect. So let's see. So right now we're not filtering by status. Let's say if I do completed, gone, cancel, no, open there, right? And maybe we need an option for just all, all status. Okay, it needs an empty value prop. That's weird. Then maybe we'll need a cross button to actually get rid of the status filter. But okay, that's how you actually filter, right? I think someone asked earlier, how do we filter? Yeah, I think Neeraj asked. So, okay, any doubts so far? Sorry, yeah. Any doubts so far? Okay, cool. Now the other things in use Frappe get doc list, right, are like you've done filters, right? There's something also called as OR filters, which is that let's say if you wanted to filter, not an AND condition, but an OR condition, right? So if the status is OR, if the status is completed, or if the completion percentage is greater than 90, that's something that you can do in your OR filters, right? The other thing is that these filters not only take equals to and all, in fact, since it's all coded in TypeScript, you'll see what all is allowed. Now, timestamp, time span, and between, these are, I think, only available for dates. But the others, are all available in. So, for example, I can also do, you know, I want to only show open and completed, right? So I can use the in operator for that. So you have filters, you have all filters, right? Then you also have limit. Limit is by default, this will limit it to 20. You can increase this limit to whatever. Ideally, you would be implementing pagination, right? And maybe we should implement pagination somewhere, but we need some other doc type to do it because I cannot create, more than 10 projects right now. So maybe we'll do it for, the country list. So do you want me to cover pagination or is that good? Like, because pagination is nothing but limit start, and then you have order by, right? That's what gets you pagination. So do you want me to cover that now or you're good? Okay, cool. So, pagination in chat CN, there must be something. Yeah, there we go. Right. Now the thing is that in pagination, what you actually need, right, is not just this UI, but you would also need to know the count, right? And you would need to know the count with the filters, right? So that you can calculate how many pages there are. Now, an easy approach would be to just use, you know, so there are two ways, right? One is that you fetch 20 and then you fetch the next 20 and you append it to the original array, right? That in that case, what you would do is that you would create a component and you would give it the page number or you would give it the start index. You would give it the same filters though, right? And it will, just render more rows for you. The other approach, and that's exactly what Frappe does. Frappe also has a load more button, right? You click on load more, loads the next 20 or 100 or 500, whatever is the limit set, right? The other approach and the lazy approach that I don't really recommend is that we maintain, the count over here. And then let's say if the user goes to, okay, so actually, wait, there are two ways to do it. Let me show you in Frappe. So let's go to country list because so there's this infinite loading one, right? You do load more and your list is still there. You do load more, right? If you look at this Shatsian one, this one, two, three, right? This is actually meant for, that you show the first page, then you go next. And so the original 20 are gone from your UI and then you see the next 20, right? Both are fine. What's not fine is that let's say that you say load more and then you load 40 and then they say load more and then you load 60, right? That's probably not fine. So we'll cover this one maybe, right? Wherein we get the count and we are able to paginate. One of the reasons why Frappe does not do it that way is because in some cases the count is too high, right? And so I think in version 15 or something, they don't even show the count if the count is very large, right? Because it takes time to compute it. So that kind of pagination where you see the page numbers, right? That is only suitable when the count is not going to be incredibly high, because otherwise, first you'll have to perform an operation to fetch the count, calculate the number of pages according to the limit set, and then go ahead and actually build it out. So, um, yeah, I don't know which one to pick. Maybe we can. Hmm. Okay, let's do the one with with fetching count. So that's why that I mean we'll also cover counts as well. Okay, I'll create a new component for this, right? I don't want it to be in the same place, so I'm going to call this folder as common, and I'm going to call this folder as pagination, right? So in pagination, I'll create uh, a page selector.tsx. Okay, what all do we need for the page selector? Now, the page selector needs to know the number of pages. So the idea about how to build React components is that your component shouldn't do a lot of things. It should do one thing and it should do that well, right? So in our case, our page selector, right, will just be, it'll just render which page am I on out of how many pages, and it will give you two buttons for next and previous. So that's all we'll cover for the page selector. So we'll say previous is a function, next is a function, current page, whatever number it is, and total pages. And it's a very, very dumb component. So that's your previous, next, current page, and total pages. So What I've done is that I've declared previous to be a void function, next to be a void function. Will make more sense when I get over here and I start building these icon buttons. So first of all, I need some components from Shatsi. I need the icon button. I don't know if they have a pagination somewhere. Maybe in data table they do. They have next and previous, right? Something like this, maybe. But yeah, okay. So we need the icon button. Where is the icon button? Or okay, I think their button component is sufficient to be used as an icon button alone. Yeah, yeah. Okay, we need this. Perfect. So yeah, something like this, right? So what we need is a flexbox with, let's say, a gap of 1, right? And we need a button component and a chevron right icon. We need a chevron left icon. We can say that on click, go to previous, right? On click, go to next, right? And in between, we need a text or something, right? We need this paragraph or the span. I'll say span and of. So this will be current page of total pages and current page plus 1 because our current page will start with 0, right? So this is a very, very dumb component. If you want to use this component, we'll see, but we won't use it directly. I'll tell you why in a bit, but let's say that I just added it over here, right? Page selector, current page, let's say it's 0 because we're using 0 indexing. Let's say the total pages is 10, next, previous. It's a dumb component for now, but yeah, something like this, right? I just need to align it and change the font styling. So item center, okay, maybe the gap can be even more, and maybe the text color for this span. Do they have some color that we can use? Yeah, okay. Looks good to me. So next previous, and then you have, it shows you on which page you are, right? Dumb component, but works nonetheless. Then let's get rid of that component. So we have the page selector. Then let's create the actual pagination component, right? Uh, the pagination component, first of all, it would need the doc type, right? Which doc type are you fetching, the count for? Because we need to fetch the count, and then from the count, we need to look at, okay, what is the current limit, right, that the user has set, and then we need to, calculate how many pages there are. So we get doc type. We need the filters, right, which will be of type filter. Filter is returned by Frappe React SDK. So doc type string filters, and I think that's it for now. Okay, assume that the page length is 20. Assume that the page length is 20, right? That we are only loading 20 at a time. Doc type filters, fine. Uh, let's get the count. So use Frappe get doc count. We'll pass it the doc type. We'll pass it the filters. Perfect. And this returns data to us. Okay, we'll call this pagination component here, and we'll pass it the filters and the doc type as project. Where can I see that? Here, maybe here. Pagination. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So for cancel it's 0, right? For open it's 1. It's coming, right? So we're getting the count. Now from the count, just for posterity's sake, can we probably okay? I mean, we'll need data. We'll need seed data for this to actually work because I don't have a lot of projects, but maybe we can create projects later on. Okay, anyway, so now that we have the length, right? Uh, like we know the entire array has, let's say, 100, right? We know each page has 20, so we can get the number of pages. So total pages will be, data by page length, right? That's your total pages. And the two things that we need to pass it would be which index are we on? Because see, if I'm on page number 1, my start index is actually 20, right? If I'm on page number 2, my start index is actually 40. It's, the the start index or page, we call it page limit start, right? Page limit start. It's not optional. Yeah. So page limit start would be for now, it'll be 0 because we're not doing anything. And so our current page will be page limit start by the page length, right? Uh, so my page, if my page limit start is 20, you know, 20 by 20, I'm on the first page, right? So that's one. And now we can actually call that component because we have current page, we have total pages. Next previous, we'll handle it later. So let's look at next. Okay, cool. Let's actually call page selector, current page. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So if you see now, it says one of one, right? I'm on page one of one. Uh, current page plus one. Yeah, I'm on page one of one, right? So, okay. Now what we'll do is that we'll create another state variable over here. Page limit start, set page limit start, right? And we'll pass it to page length. We'll limit it to 20 because that's what we've assumed. We can make it, dynamic as well. And then over here, is it, I don't know. Oh, page limit start is page limit start. Perfect. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, makes sense. In pagination, now the next page. So how do we handle next page, right? Whatever is my current page, I just need to increase my page limit start by, uh, by my page length. That's my page limit start, the next page. So we do that by, I mean, for now, let's do it this way that const Yeah. If the new page limit start is greater than data, right? And data can be undefined. So if the new page limit start is greater than data, that's not possible, right? Then don't go to the next page, right? Else else set page limit start to the new page limit start. Same thing for previous. If it's less than zero, return, else, set it to new page limit start. Now you'll see a problem with this, right? Then the problem is that this again, it's a state variable, right? And this is a state setter. So ideally, what we should do is that we should, make this update inside this, like here, right? Because new page limit start depends on the same state that it's updating. So ideally, you should do that. In this case, I'm not doing it because I'll have to wire up a bunch of the other things to do that. But what you can do is that you can make this a function, and then in the function you can evaluate, the new page limit start and everything. Actually, you know what? Let's do it. It's not a big deal. We'll take this type, and in our pagination, we'll do this. Okay, and then plus page length. So you would do it something like this. So you would just return P if nothing changes, else you will return this. So, this makes it idempotent. That is, because new page limit start, right, is dependent on the same state variable that you're updating, you should always update state variables like this inside a callback function in the state setter, right? Same thing, you can wire it up over here. And the type definition that I had to make a change to was that I just picked the type definition that VS Code gave me for this one, right? I just picked that type definition and added it over here. Here. Okay. Let's do the same thing here. Uh, P minus, if new page limit start, then return P, else. Perfect. Okay, does this make sense so far? I know it's a lot to cover, right? Pagination is a little complicated. Okay, cool. So this should work. The problem is that I don't really have data for it to work in the first place, right? Each child should have a key prop. Oh, I forgot this. So let's do that. Key will be project dot name. And then why is this coming up as 0? Let's look at that. Oh, okay. I did not do this, right? That if there is a status, then only pass it a filter, else undefined. So, you know what? Better approach. Filters, use memo, right? And in my dependency, I'll have to add this. And over here, I can say filters instead, right? And filters will be a filter array. And same thing over here. Instead of duplicating this logic, You know, cool. I mean, it works, right? But we wouldn't know. And you can see that the next and previous buttons don't really do anything. We can also do things like, disable those buttons, right? That will be handled inside the page selector itself. That is, if if your current page, right, is equal to 0, then actually do that. Disabled, or I'm doing it on the icon, no? No. Disabled if current page is equal to 0, and this button is disabled if current page is equal to total page. I think it should be total pages minus 1, but I'm not sure. It will be total pages minus 1. Okay, cool. See, both of them are disabled. Now, the problem is that I don't really have a lot of projects. So what we could do theoretically is to test the pagination. We can try it with currency for now, right? And we can get rid of filters just for uh, this, just for testing it, right? And in pagination, oh God, filters should be optional. Okay, let's see. Oh, what is currency? Yeah. Okay. Let's see if that works. Seems to work, right? I don't know how many currencies there are. Oh no. So that's not the page, right? That's the problem. That's what was confusing. 149 is not the page. Wait, what are we sending it for page? Total pages is, okay, no. This should be, wait. Hmm. Yeah, this seems to be fine. Total pages. 149 divided by page length. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So this was the issue, missing brackets. Yeah. Now it works fine. Perfect. Cool. And I mean, it would work with country as well. I don't know how many countries there are. I expected only 8 to 10 currencies to be there in by default. But yeah, works. Yeah, we definitely need some loading states because it takes some time. Perfect. Okay. I hope that was clear. Okay. Now, one of the things that that I really like to do is I make everything into a hook, right? So I really like my components, so React is a component-based framework, but what happens is that our components, sometimes do a lot of UI as well as logic, right? In most cases, what I would like to do is that oh, sorry, not this. Yeah. What I would like to do is, I would like to separate out the logic in a separate hook, and just have the UI. That's sort of what we've done over here. If you look at this component, it's mostly logic, right? And then the entire UI is being driven into page selector, right? And so that's what's recommended. But I'll give you a better example of this. See, over here, we have to again pass the doc type, page limit start, filters, set page limit start, right? And then we have to maintain that over here, right? It's a lot of boilerplate. So, you know what? Let's actually create a hook out of this. We create a hook called use pagination, right? And it will be a .ts file, not a .tsx file. In your case, if you're using JavaScript, it will be a .js file. Use pagination, and it won't be JSX based because it's just a hook, right? I'll tell you exactly what my issue is with the current situation is that I need to declare not only the component, right, but I need to also declare some logic over here, and then I need to pass it that way. So we'll handle it in use pagination. So let's see, we have doc type, which will be a string. We have filters, which will be a filter array, right? So I'll encapsulate all of the logic over here. And so it's just a hook. Page length will also be here. Data fetching and all of this. I mean, the problem is that this is almost there, right? This thing is like almost there. Um, okay, so the idea really is that I don't have to, in this case, in my projects over here, I don't maintain a state variable. I just do, uh, use pagination, and I just pass project and filters. That's it. Something like that, right? And then it returns everything to me. It returns this page limit start to me, and it returns, set page limit start, and then also returns me the props that I need to pass to the pagination, right? The problem is that it doesn't really make sense, much sense over here right now because we haven't implemented the entire pagination stack. The entire pagination stack would also allow you to set the page limit, right? Would allow you to set the page length. So once we have that, this gets more complicated. So yeah, maybe for another time, but if you like, this is what I consider personally. I consider this to be a good practice that we separate out logic and hooks, and then we have components just for just for UI. So yeah, but for now we can ignore it. I don't think we'll implement the page limit because that'll take another half an hour or something. We'll delete this. Okay. Do we have any doubts so far? Like how I, dynamically build the filters, right? I can add more state variables, etc. And then, the page limiting for the pagination. Okay. So next, what do we want to cover? Do we want to cover fetching a project, or do we want to cover caching? What do you think we should cover? So we have fetching a document, updating a document, deleting a document. Okay, two people have said caching. Uh, I don't know if we'll get enough time to actually cover caching. Okay, hmm. I mean, I can cover caching, but the thing is that without updating, the caching doesn't make much sense because then I can go into revalidations. Okay, let's cover caching tomorrow. The more I think about it, the more I think that it's a bad idea to cover it right now. We have about, give or take, 45 to 50 minutes or so, right? So let's try to finish deleting, editing, and creating projects, right? So let's try doing that. Okay, so pagination can actually go here. Let's do this. Yeah, okay. And okay, cool. So we have a status filter, gets us the project. We can add a plus button over here to create a project, and let's say that we create a project in a pop-up or something, right? So for that, mm, we'll add this into a div. We'll say flex justify between item center. In fact, even this should be item center, right? And then we can say margin bottom 4. Cool. We can have a button. Okay, I don't think there's a variant. Oh, there is a variant. Okay, cool. New project, right? In fact, let's just call it new. Is there an add or a plus sign that we get? Too big. Okay, something like this, right? So we click on this button, opens up a pop-up, or maybe takes us to a page. Right? We create the project, and then the back in the background, the list updates, right? So let's look at project. Oh God, man. Project. We can probably just use this one, right? But the problem is that we don't really have an async dropdown. That's one problem. Uh, so that'll be a fun one to make that. Yeah, to make that component. That'll be a fun one. And then we have, project name and template is fine. Template is also link field. So we need components for link fields, right? Uh, Series, we can just hard code it for now. It's not really mandatory anyway because it'll automatically take it up. Um, yeah. So there are two parts to this. One is the actual link field that we need to create, right? We need to create a new component. That's one. The other is that you see how it automatically brought up the default company, right? We can also do that. And that's something that I want to cover over here. So let's start by creating this pop-up and then we'll get to the link field. The link field is going to be fun, right? Because we'll use something called as, no, not context menu. Drawer, no, combo box. Yeah. We'll use something like this. We'll build something like this, right? Let's uh, try doing that. Okay, first things first, let's go and create a new folder called features inside our components, right? So we have UI features common. In features, let's create a folder for projects. Okay. In projects, let's create project button. Okay, cool. Create project button doesn't really take any props whatsoever because it doesn't need to. It will render the same button as earlier. So this button that can be rendered by this, and then from here I can remove these two, right? And I'll just call the create project button here. Perfect. So now we just have a button. We need to create a modal, right? They'll have something called as pop-up or modal or dialog. Yeah, dialog. Yeah, we need this. So this is what I like about Radix, that we don't have to manage any state. It already, like, we don't have to manage a state for, for creating, like for opening and closing. Okay, we need to install this. So that's another thing. So I'm installing dialog because we're creating it in a pop-up, and I'll take all of this, I guess. Wouldn't hurt. And then the button can go inside this. Let's see how it looks. Perfect. Now we'll make changes to this. So, and why is this right, right aligned? Uh, okay, maybe that's the style. Wow. Okay, cool. New project and create a new project, whatever. Yeah. So, we'll say name. Now, yeah, that's why I wanted to first cover forms, right? Because see, we'll need, how many fields do we need? We need the project name, we need the template, and we need the company, right? So all in all, we'll need four fields or three fields, and you'll soon realize, that this managing state for this is going to be a nightmare. Let's actually check the variable names because I'm not sure about the variable names. Mm, so this is project name, right? I'm just wiring it up for now, right? Just very, very basic wiring up. Then we have, what do we need? Project type, or no, there was a template, right? Some sort of template or something. From template, project template, okay. So we can use project template and company. Okay, perfect. So let's look at our dialog. Sorry, let's look at this. Yeah. So can someone tell me what the problem right now is? That let's say if I wanted to get this form and I wanted to, submit this form, should I, go over the insanity of doing this? Use state one for project name, then we'll need to do it for project template, then we need to do it for company, right? And then we also need to validate and do everything, right? This is insanity. So that's why we'll use form, but we'll use React Hook form for this. So where's React Hook form? So let's install this. Yarn add React Hook Form. Okay. Now the thing about React Hook Form is that actually even ShadCN has added support for React Hook Form somewhere, right? I think they do it over here in form field or whatever, right? So we're going to do the same. We're going to make it something similar. But before that, we'll have to install a form component. So we'll have to install from ShadCN as well. Okay. So we'll create a new form. This use form comes from uh, yeah, this comes from React Hook Form. What I actually like to do is that my project form, right? I make it into a separate component. I don't need to export it in this case because then we can technically use it for editing as well. But anyway, I separate it out into a separate component so that I hook it up over here. And then over here, I call project form, right? Something like this. So the entire dialog content, in fact, we usually, bring it over there. So project form will need to have the button and we'll need to have the actual form as well. But this form will change because we'll use the ShadCN. I haven't used it ever, so I don't know how this works. But they apparently do form field. Okay, okay, which is weird, right? Because if I use input, I can just do um, form.register, right? Now, another good thing about React Hook Form is that, again, first class TypeScript support. So I can just say that I'm creating a project and it already knows everything. And now I get autocomplete in my forms as well, right? So I can say that this is project name. I don't need this ID anymore. It'll automatically handle that. I don't need the value anymore. Right? So this is, I mean, you'll have to refer to React Hook Forms documentation for this. But I'll tell you what is really cool about this, right? Is that it handles this for you. All the validations and stuff, it handles it for you. Problem is that, as far as I understand, in Shatsi and what they're doing is the reason why they are using this is because it will also show you the form message, right? So the error message, and it will turn into red and everything, right? So it will mark it as invalid and stuff. So for now, we'll just use their example. They're using controller everywhere, which I'm not entirely sure why it's needed because the good thing about reactive form is that it actually doesn't do live state updates, right? It uses refs for everything. So yeah, let's do this form field, form item, and then name will be project name, form label, not this, form control, and then form message is the error message that comes up, right? And I can get rid of this, I guess. Let's see if that works. Get field state. Oh, okay, yeah. For all of these, I need to wrap it into in a form component, and that form component will come from blah 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 blah. Yeah, I need to pass form to it. So I think that does the context setting for us. Okay. Then you'll have a regular HTML form component, uh, and you'll say on submit form dot handle submit on submit, and then let's. Okay, cool. Should work now. Yeah. So the UI changed a little bit. We don't really care about that, but at least this is, now there. And I don't know if I've made it required or not. I did not. So I can pass something called as rules, and I can say that it's required, right? You can pass in other rules like, max length, etc. In this case, I think the max length is value of 140 because it's a data field. Data fields usually have a max length of 140. So now if I try to save, see it becomes red and everything. And if I don't know if this will be 140 characters or not. Yeah, see, also shows you the error. Now this was far simpler compared to, what we had to do, right? If we had to, wire it up ourselves, this would be, far more complex. I don't particularly like the UI over here. I like Chakra UIs better because the label being red is just weird, right? Maybe an outline on this, with the red color, that would have been better, I guess. But whatever. Yeah. So anyway, we created one form field. Similarly, we'll create other form fields, right? Now, problem is that the other form fields are not really form fields. Those two are supposed to be uh, are link fields, and we'll create a new component for that. Let me just check anything else that we had over here. No, right? So just the project name and two link fields. Okay. So now I'll give you another option. What should we do first? Should we set the default value for the company dynamically, or should we first make the component for the link field? Okay, so the difficult part first. Let's see. Combo box. Combo box uses popover and command. We'll have to install both of those. So, okay. Two people for link field, one for default company. We'll first try to make the link field. I don't think it's going to take time, honestly. There's this hook that we have called use search, and it does things automatically. But let's see. Popover, where is the popover? So we added popover and we added we added popover and we added command, right? Because those two are required for the combo box. Now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably going to just use uh, this function, right? I think that should be good enough for our use case. Let's make the link field. Where's the components? This will be UI, but we'll call it uh, form fields because we'll eventually need date fields and stuff like that. So link.tsx, tsrf. Actually, you know what? Let's not call it link. It'll be so confusing. Link field. Okay. So in link field, we'll need two things for now, right? We'll need a value and we'll need an on change. That's it, right? So value on change. That's one of the basic things that we need. The other thing is that we need, as someone is typing, right? We need that search value, right? So let's maintain that over here. So search value, set search value. Okay. Then we can do something like this: pop up, pop over trigger, whatever they are doing. Let's do that. Copy and paste it. And then let's also bring in all these utilities. No, they also need a button. Weird. Okay, cool. Now that you have that, uh, okay, yeah. It says framework.find or whatever. Yeah, we're not going to do any of that. I don't know why you need. Where are we using open? Okay. So we do need a state for open. Okay, cool. Now the problem is that when the user types something, we need to actually filter, right? And uh, we need to search the backend and filter it. So how do we do that? Well, they have this command input, right? So I'm assuming that if we were to make it, uh, common, we'll need a doc type for this link field. So which doc type? What's the value? What's the current value, and what will happen when the value changes? So let's get rid of this because we can do that. Um, okay. If there is a value, then value, else select doc type, right? Whatever. And no doc type found is my empty message. Search, just keep it search. Yeah. Okay, now on change. Yeah. So we just need this frameworks, right? So what they did was they had this array of frameworks, right? And then they were, working with that, right? So yeah. So what we would like to do is we would like to search, when this search value changes. So first of all, is this search value even changing? Answer is no, right? Search value. Okay. So this command input, we need to actually set its value to the search value. And then we need to set or on value change. Yeah, on value change, set search value, right? So that's done. The other thing that we need to do is over here, there's some, disable something, not disable, but okay, actually, let me pull up the documentation for command K. So they have this asynchronous results, yes. So they have this, and then yeah, should filter equals to false. So yeah, we don't want the command like the combo box to itself filter. We will filter ourselves, right? So we have the search value. Let's see if it works, if it's any good. We'll have to call this link field over here somewhere. I'll just call it over here. Doc type, I'll pass company for now, and value and on change can be empty. Let's just see if it renders correctly. So yeah, okay, we have this search box, and let's see if it prints any search value. No, it did not. Undefined is not an iterable. Um, oh, okay. In link field, I think it's from here. Get rid of this. Yeah, okay, let's see. Nope. Uh, undefined is not iterable. It's in command K somewhere. Okay, think it's this. On value change, when the search value changes, I mean, what else do we need? Oh, nope. Where would it actually throw this error on? Mm, no idea. Let's see over here. What are they doing here? They have this value label thing going on with them. They have a popover trigger as child. I mean, we're pretty much doing the same thing, right? And then they have popover content. They have command. Okay, if I get rid of should filter, does that help? Nope. Something's wrong with the command input, I believe. Yeah, see, it's throwing an error, right? Undefined is not an iterable, and it's throwing that error when I'm trying to type. So something's wrong with this command input. Yeah. And if I set the should filter to false, then it's also throwing an error. Okay, that's weird. Let's recreate the exact same example from Shatsi, and if there's an error over there, then that's a totally different issue. Okay, let's bring here. Yep, this should do it. Yeah, there's some issue with ShadCN's implementation probably, but the problem is that I don't know where that is, or at least the error messages aren't really helping me over here. It's the same, right? Have I missed anything? Are you guys able to see something that I might have missed? Nope. I don't see where this would throw an error. hmm Now it's throwing an error as soon as it tried to render something. It's even worse now. Okay, I don't think that this is working correctly, but what we can do is we can build our own. Uh, I mean, it's the same thing. We just replace command with our input and everything. I guess we should do that then, right? Yeah, no, these guys are not doing really anything. hmm Okay, cool. So then in that case, we get rid of the entire thing. We keep the popover around because we need the popover, but we remove that. Yeah. Okay. So here's what we'll do. We'll create our own sort of div and everything, right? We don't really need the command K anyway for filtering, so let's do this. Search value is search value on change. Good. That's it. So we got that. We need some styling. I really like the styling that they had. So maybe this, all of this styling we can copy and we can paste here, but instead of the, we do this. And we get some magnifying glass icon from somewhere. We get our value and on change, and we forget about this now. Yeah, something similar, but not as hideous. Um, Wait, let's look at their input and see if they can, if we can embed things in it. Probably not. Okay, anyway, I don't think that makes a lot more sense. I think the company is not there. Where? Why would you need the company? I don't know if that works. I just want that search icon. Yeah, doesn't work. Forget it. We'll get rid of the search icon. We won't have any children over here. And let's actually get rid of this div as well. And for placeholder, we'll just say search. Perfect. Let's see, we'll need the check icon eventually. Okay, we can get rid of all of this. We can get rid of this. Perfect. Let's see. Yeah, something similar, not as pretty, but works for now, right? Uh, okay, cool. The company name you're calling in default, I don't think that that's the problem, right? Because I haven't even started fetching data so far. So this is just an issue with command K. I'll start fetching data now, right? So we have the search value. I hope the search value is works. So there's this hook in React, Frappe React SDK called as use search, right? And it takes in the doc type that you want to search, takes in the search value, right? Uh, there's also a limit, etc., and it also takes in filters if you want to filter, right? So for example, we only want to show active projects, so you can pass in filters. But this will handle debouncing, so even if the user types very quickly, it won't make as many requests, right? And you can set the debounce, but by default it's debounce to 250 milliseconds. You can set the debounce over here. It's a parameter. Use search, we haven't used this in a long time, so I don't even know whether it works or not. So let's see. It returns data. Let's see what the data looks like. Because there was a change in how this API works between V14 and uh, V15. Okay. So I think our company name is, or our, I don't know what doc type we are doing, Acme Corp, right? See? So it gives you value, description, and label, right? Label is optional. It sometimes gives you label, sometimes it doesn't give you label, right? But basically, it gives you all of this. For now, we can only show the values, right? So we'll create a div over here and we'll say something like this. So it'll be data. So it'll be data dot results dot map, right? And this will be item dot value on change item dot value, something like this. See, cannot read properties of undefined. Yeah, I think the type definition is incorrect. It's not. Yeah, I think the type definition is incorrect. It's not data.results. I think this was in version 14. In version 15, this has become data.message. So we'll make that change in Frappe React SDK. The data is coming up, but yeah, see, the data does come up, but yeah, this should be data.message, not data.results. I'll make that change. But anyway, so are we setting the value? I don't think we are setting the value right now in the backend, right? So that's all right. We can update the UI for this a little bit. We can go to command and we can see, the kind of UI that they had. They were doing something like this. So we'll also take the same styles and have an overflow, right? For an empty state, so let's say if the empty state is 0, then maybe we can show a span with this node of type found. So this is also done. Empty result set is done. Then we have command group. I think we were using command group. Uh, there's command separator, and then there's command item. So this command item is what will go over here. Yeah. And the problem is that when I click on this, obviously the one on top, needs to handle that for us, right? So that needs to be handled over here. We'll look at the example that they have for, for form over here. So for form, they say that you can pretty much use the same concept, form field and everything, and form label, same thing as before, as above over here. This will be company, and then they have the link field or whatever. They have a form message. They end it with a form item. So, and this will be company. Cool. So we got that. Now the link field comes in between, right? The value is now field uh, dot value, and on change becomes field dot on change. Now we can make it even more fancy. One of the link fields that I've actually designed for another project, that actually handles a lot of things, blur effect, like, if the user, taps out, especially if, in a doc type, we can say that use title for link field. It also handles that. Now, that component is far too complex. I made it using a library called Downshift. Uh, Downshift, and then styled it completely using Tailwind and Chakra. So, yeah, maybe someday, when I get time, I'm able to open source it. Uh, Currently, it's just used like for a very, very specific, use case. So anyway, so we got this, right? Let's see if selecting a company actually works. Yeah, see? So that's a link field. Now, obviously, the link field can be better, right? No judgments here. Like, the style and everything needs to be better. Uh, what we can do is we can say that if the value is equal to item dot value, then we can show, this. I don't know why it would be absolutely positioned, but yeah, something like that. Actually, now I know why it needs to be absolutely positioned. Uh, and this can have a PL of 4 or maybe 6, 4, right? This can have a PY of 2. This can have a PT of 2. Yeah. And then we can also, incorporate hover effects and stuff like that, right? So I can say that when it's hovered, make the BG display 50 or something, right? Okay. And left, instead of left 0, this can be left 2 so that it's not at the absolute edge. Yeah, something like that. So with a little bit, of workarounds, you can work this way, and then this width that is constrained, right? I want to fix that. I'm not sure if I'll be able to fix that, but let's see. Yeah, and then this popover, I also want to fix this. Yeah, if there is a max width somewhere, we need to get rid of that. But apart from that, I think it's fine. Yeah, we'll have to make some design changes, but at least you got to know how to use React Hook Form, use a controller in React Hook Form. That's what Shadsian is doing, as well as using use search. All right. So, are there any questions? I know this is a lot to take, but any questions so far? Let's look this. Yeah, I'll share that right now. Uh, Actually, I think field. Okay, let's get rid of this. See, creating the doc is going to be far easier, but the link field, let me check if there is an enable disabled in project template or not. Mm, okay, there is no. Nah, I'll have to create tasks as well. Okay, what to do then? Okay, fine. For the company, at least, I can tell you that in company, let's say that I do not want to use group companies, right? So I can pass that over here. And by the way, company is required, right? So yeah, I can pass filters. So what I'll do is that I'll incorporate that into my component. So filters will be of type filter from Frappe React SDK. You have filters, and then in use search, right? See the parameters: doc type, text, filters, limit, debounce, right? So we can go all the way to filters. So now let's say I do not want group companies. I can pass filters over here. So filters will be is group is equal to 0. I don't want group companies to show up over there. So that's my filter. We don't need label. We'll get rid of it. Okay, cool. So if I go over here, in the network call, right? Yeah. In the network call, you'll see that the payload actually passes the filter. So it is being filtered. Obviously, both of them are non-group companies, so we can't really do anything about it. But yeah, it is doing that. Now, uh, see, I told you about debouncing, right? The thing that usesearch does, the hook, is that even if I type fast, there was only one search query that happened, right, with the final result. Because if the user types very fast, you don't really want to, uh, make so many API calls to the backend. So, oh God, okay. Yeah. So yeah, the is that like I don't know how clear it is whether whether this was helpful or not, but the link field is probably one of the most complicated components that you'll ever build in React, uh, along with the child table. The child table is another beast. So yeah, any questions so far? Okay, so the form submission part is the easy part, right? If I want to create a new project, you know, so if I save changes right now, it's coming up over here. I don't know what this error is. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, but this is coming up over here, right? The data, and all we need to do is just create a doc. So that's exactly what we'll do. We'll say use Frappe create doc. It's a hook again, right? And this also accepts an argument, like what are you actually creating, uh, and it returns. So again, for any cloud operation, you need to handle loading states, error states, etc. Right? So it gives you everything. So it gives you loading, whether it's loading or not, whether it's completed or not, the error, and it also gives you a reset if you wanted to reset the hook, right? So we'll just do create doc, and the first thing that it will ask is what are you creating, and then the data, right? That's it. That's pretty much it. Like just one line, use Frappe create doc. For loading an error you can handle by showing like an error banner. I'll share the component code. Uh, for loading, what you can do is that you can disable the submit button when it's loading, right? So you can say that when it's loading, just disable it. And you can also do something like if it's loading, then saving, else save changes, right? That's all. Hopefully this works. I don't know if project will work. My first project, company Acme Corp. So it did work, I think. Yeah, it did work. Obviously, we're not closing the pop-up. We need to do all of that. But yeah, if I refresh, yeah, this project is ready. Now, the next series of steps are going to be far more simpler, right? So we'll say that we need to close the pop-up when this is done, right? Uh, when the form is submitted. So we'll have a use state. We'll set open, and then in dialog we'll say open on open change set open, and to the form we'll say on close, right? And in this we'll just set open to false. Reason being why we need on close is because we have no other way of actually closing the pop-up, right? So on create doc returns a promise, so you can just do dot then, right? And you can say on close. So create the doc, close the pop-up. If there's an error, then don't close the pop-up, obviously, right? Perfect. Done, done. This should be good enough, right? My second project. Yeah. Okay, I refreshed it, so that's why it's coming up, right? Now we can use real-time listeners to do that. So we have two things that's pending over here. One is real-time listeners, uh, to update this list as soon as I create the project, right? And I think the other thing was I forget. Yeah, default company, right? Which one should we cover now? I guess the real-time listener is far simpler. Yeah. So in projects, so there are two ways. One is that you can, and the one that we'll use for now is you can use a listener called use Frappe doc type event listener. If you're familiar with ERPNext and how SocketIO works in ERP or in Frappe, right? Whenever a list is updated, it uh, throws or it emits a event called list underscore update, right? This hook listens to that event and for that particular doc type. So we'll say for project, whenever the project list is updated, right, we need to now refetch this data, right? This whatever this data was, we need to refetch it. So it returns something called as a mutate. This is something that SWR returns. I'll get to this tomorrow when we get into revalidations and mutations and why is it called mutate, right? But basically mutate just re-triggers the request. So if we get an event, mutate. That's it. That's pretty much it. So if you see this now, my third project, okay, maybe real-time listeners are not working. Or did it come up? I don't know if it came up or not. But let's see if real-time listeners are working or not. Yeah, real-time listeners, sometimes they do not work on localhost 8080 for some reason. Let me build this app and then show it to you over there. We'll go to localhost 8026 now and slash scope. Oh, we need to go to slash projects as well. Okay. Let's see if the real-time events are, yeah, so doc type subscribe project. Now, my fourth project, see, works, right? This should ideally also work on localhost 8080, but sometimes it doesn't, and I haven't been able to figure out exactly why. One of the reasons could be that this SocketIO event is being initialized twice. That is something that we would probably need to fix in Frappe React SDK. But for example, Raven wouldn't even work without socket events. So on my Raven bench, it works. So kind of weird. I think it is because this initial WebSocket connection is closed, and then this one just doesn't work, right? See, yeah, I think it's got something to do with that. So only doesn't work on 8080, but on the actual side it will work, right? So is this clear? Like this seems to be very simple, right? That if you want to, listen to the event in real time, just do that. So any questions so far? Do you want me to try the default company stuff? Uh, so okay, I'll tell you what Frappe does. If you open up the inspector, Frappe loads a lot of things in window. One of the things it loads is called the boot. No, that's in this case, we already know what the event is. It's list underscore update. If you want to listen to a custom event, there is a use Frappe event listener. So this is specifically a doc type event listener. It listens for that particular doc type. And then because the way it works is that it will subscribe to that topic, right? And so only if you're subscribed will it actually get you like the socket events, right? If you're not subscribed, then why would, Frappe send socket events to each and every user? So, but the other is for listening to, just random events. This is our Okay, so the way that Frappe, stores a lot of the default values and stuff is that it will have this Frappe.boot, right? And it's got a lot of things. Uh, but it will also have something called as sys defaults and user defaults. So this is user, and then in user you've got user defaults. How to access private files? What does that mean? Okay, so till Neeraj replies, let's actually finish this. So you can see over here, there's this company, right? So the company for this, like for this user, the user default is Acme Corp demo, right? And we somehow need this boot. So that's exactly what we did in Raven, right? We needed the boot, and but the boot doesn't come up over here. It only comes up on the desk interface. So if I do frappe dot boot, there's nothing. There's like literally nothing, right? In fact, even if I do window.frappe.boot, there's nothing, right? So we need that boot to be able to actually access from the window object itself, right? Uh, for that reason, in VS Code, if I go to Raven, it's for this reason that in Raven.py, we actually did all of this, right? We got the context, we got the boot and stuff. So yeah, all of this. And then we get that boot and then we use it. Private files are accessible, based on the doc type that it is linked to, right? So in the file doc type, there is a reference doc type and reference doc name, as well as the field, right? So if you even have field level permissions, file access is based off of that. So got nothing to do with React. One thing that you can probably do is that if it's not working on localhost 880, just remember that in your vite config, in your proxy options, was it proxy options or was it vite config? Should be somewhere. Yeah, 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 yeah. In your proxy options, just make sure that this also has private in it. That's it. This is only for localhost 8080. So anyway, do you want me to cover the boot thing, or is this something that you can do yourself? And are there any doubts? Because we covered a lot of things today. We covered lists, we covered event listeners, part of mutation. We learned how to build, a component and separate out the logic as well as the UI in those components. We actually built two components. We built one for the pagination, the other for the link field. Um, we learned how to search, what debouncing is. Okay, so yeah, I think the boot will be required because, if you're building with ERPNext or on top of ERPNext, you will definitely need boot, right? Somehow, somewhere you'll need the boot, right? So here's what Can ERPNext website be modified using React? Yeah, like website. Like you can technically build it, and then it will just generate more files in this www folder, right? So yeah, I mean, this this is not the interface that we are building is not technically the desk interface. It's actually just it's just a website page. So okay, let's copy most of these things, and we'll remove whatever we don't need, right? In fact, let's copy the whole thing, and then we go to scope.html. But in scope.html, we don't need everything. We need in scope.py. Okay. Now in scope.py, I don't need telemetry. Uh, I don't need any of that. Uh, Build version. I don't need the we don't need to generate the CSRF token. We are already getting that, hopefully. Server script enabled or not. We don't need this. We don't need the push request server either. Yeah. Okay. One thing that you'll note is that there is this API called get context for dev. This was in Raven, right? Uh, what that does, let me just remove this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So on the dev environment, right, we won't get like this Python file is not executed, right? Because it was never a part like the dev server, the React dev server is not even, getting the data from Frappe. The Wheat server is actually, hosting the app on 8080. So on the dev environment, we'll need the context from an API, which we'll wire up. But this is the context. Let's see if this works. One thing that we'll need to make a change in is index.html, wherein we'll have to add these. So we only have the CSRF token. We'll have to add more stuff to this. So index.html, yeah, something like this. So we don't need app name, but yeah, this is good enough. So all I'm doing is that in the window object, I'm just creating a new object called Frappe, right? And then in Frappe, if it doesn't already exist, and then in Frappe.boot, I'm just parsing whatever we get, and these are in Jinja tags. So whatever is returned from the context, we get that back. Let's see if that works. We'll build the app. 8026. Yeah, see, we got the boot. How did we get the boot? Just check your body script tag. See, it just replaced that JSON.parse. It replaced it with the entire string of the boot. Cool. So we now have boot, and in this we have user, and in user we have something called as defaults. So we can actually create a function called get user defaults, right? Now, problem is that this only works on localhost 8026, doesn't work on 8080, right? Um, why? Because you look at this script tag, I mean, you know, it's not being served. So how do we handle that? In Raven, what we did was that in main.tsx, we actually fetched the entire thing, right? So let me copy this and let's go to main.tsx. So I don't need most things over here. I don't need service worker, for example. I don't need the React DOM, for example. Right, so all I'm doing is I'm saying go to scope, in scope, go to www, go to scope, and just call get context for dev. It's a simple fetch call, right? Get the response, and then just append it to your boot. Okay, we expect an error, a TypeScript error over here, so that's all right. But this should work technically. All we are doing is if we are in the dev environment, fetch the context or fetch the boot, and then once the boot is fetched, just set it into the window. So let's see if that works on localhost 8080. Which one? What listens to SocketIO? No, there's no listener. There's no listener. It's just we're taking the entire window and just adding. It's similar to frappe.provide or something that's available uh, in Frappe framework itself, right? You can just append it to the windows. It's similar to that. There's no listener as such. This call happens only once when the app loads. So it gets the boot and then just sets it. So even in our HTML, you'll see that this is still the same. This hasn't changed. We have set it via JavaScript only for the dev environment. So now that we have that, we can actually we'll create a utility function, right? So the utility function goes into utils or lib, okay? And we can create a file called defaults.ts, and we can create a function, export this function as well, get user default. And in get user default, we'll need the key, right? So the key will be a string, and we'll need to use this key to get the user default. So we need to go to window.frappe.boot. So we'll say window.frappe.boot.user.defaults.key, right? Get user default, and then in our create project button, we just need to set it as a default value. So we'll say default values company will be get user default company. Don't know if that works on the UI or not, but should work. Yeah, see, now your default company is coming up. And in fact, you can use the boot for almost everything. In version 14, we were actually using the boot for translations as well, right? Because it actually contained the entire translations. Sure, Rafael, thanks. So, but yeah, but now, I think the translations are different now. So, yeah. Anyway, that's it, I think, for today, anyway. Right? Do we have any questions? Because that's the main thing, right? Like the entire idea is that if you're taking a live class, then you should be able to ask as many questions as you want to. So, not very difficult uh, to link a Ravenbot with ChatGPT APIs. That's something that we are also looking into. right? Raven bot is just, it can just send messages, right? So you can link it with a ChatGPT API if you wanted to. No. Why would it? No, it wouldn't, right? Uh, it only listen to. Yes, so I'll push all of this code to Git and the same repo, right? And sort of, why would you need an external node app for like Frappe? So I mean, you can have an external node app that notifies Frappe via webhook or something, and then Frappe then sends a real-time event if that's a requirement. But uh, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Any more questions, guys? Okay, I think if that's it, then we'll meet tomorrow. We covered creation of a doc. Tomorrow we'll also work on deletion. Can we publish events from front end and listen in back end? That's one part that's not available in Frappe. So that's a limitation from Frappe. Uh, the problem is that it's one way, right? That is okay. So there is something called as middlewares that Ankush had added before he went on a sabbatical, right? So technically, you can publish an event from front end. You can listen to it on the back end, right? You'll have to create a SocketIO.js file in your custom app. You can do that, but the thing is, then how will you actually access the database from there, right? That's the part that won't work. So, because what's the point in, in publishing an event and then not being able to access the database? In fact, if we were able to publish events, then for our messages for Raven, we would just run the entire thing on WebSockets, like even sending messages. Listener using Node.js app to listen to the Redis server. Okay. Yeah, you can, right? The thing is that it won't work for everyone. In some, so Ankush told me that there'll be a lot of things that would need to change at the framework level. So that's one of the things that I think he'll eventually work on. That is, he'll try to, so he's already done half the work, right? Earlier, even the socket events were not namespaced. Now they are. Uh, and he's also done, that you can add your own middleware in between. I think the only step that's remaining is talking to the database from a socket event. So from your Node.js, so there is one way linking, the other way linking, I think he'll take it up. But that's a limitation on the framework side. Problem is that perhaps it won't work on, let's say, Frappe Cloud, right? So they would have to also make changes to Frappe Cloud uh, for it to work. I don't know the downstream effects, but that's on their minds as well. Yeah. Frappe socket. Yeah, you can listen to events, right? The problem is that after listening to this event, how do I go to my database? That's the part that's the tricky one, right? Like I can listen to events. I think this is now natively added into Frappe framework as well. So Frappe framework, docs, socket, maybe real time. Yeah, custom event handler. See, it's available in nightly version, whatever. Yeah. You need to create a handlers.js file in real time, and then you can listen to events. So that's there, right? Um, but yeah, the problem is that what do I do after this? Sure, thanks, Babu. So yeah, I think if there are more questions, feel free to drop them on. I hope everyone's joined that chat that we have, right? And uh, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow. We have a lot of things to cover tomorrow. All right. Thank you guys. Bye.